minutes to get everybody in. I'm sure more will, sorry, I had a pop up there. More will join us, but we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for coming to hear one of our own today. I've been looking forward to this visit with Robin and hearing about a lot of things that she has learned along the way. If you don't mind, we're going to open with prayer. So if you'll bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for today, for your guidance and your wisdom that you promise us when we ask for it, it will be received. I pray that you would speak through Robin today, that you would bless those in attendance and meet their needs, and pray that you would enable us to listen to the words that you'll be speaking to us today through Robin and her experience. Pray for the blessings on all the families involved here, and pray for Samford University, Father, and lead and guide us each day. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Mm-hmm. Well, this is really fun. We've been planning this and looking forward to this for quite a while. One little announcement I want to make, if you haven't heard, that we will have homecoming this year, in-person homecoming, November 5th and 6th. So if you will put that on your calendar and remember that. And then just a reminder, I don't know who needs reminders at this point in our experience with Zoom, but if you want to put it in speaker view, you can. Mute your microphone, all those things. I'll be watching the questions in the chat box. So Robin really told me that she wanted this to be a conversational event. She's going to talk for about 15 minutes. But so as she says things, we're kind of hoping to springboard off of anything that she says. And so you can just put the questions in the box, and we'll answer as many as we have time for towards the end of the time. So right now I want to turn it over to our Dean. She's still a new Dean. We can still call her that. Dean, Dr. Anna McEwen. And she started here with us, as most of you know, in January of 2020. So Dr. McEwen, if you would take over and introduce Robin.
Oh, I'm so happy to. Well, Dr. Robin Duncan has worked in education for 26 years. She has had a variety of roles, including a public school teacher, faculty at Samford, and now she serves as the Dean of the School of Education at California Baptist University. She has experience in schools in Indonesia, Malaysia, Eswatini, formerly Swaziland, and the UK. Dr. Duncan lived and worked in England, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Her work in Malaysia was particularly with schools and students in refugee communities. She has a BS in math and chemistry from Samford, and I think some of you may have been her peers in that. An MA in math education from UAB, and an EDD in Ed Leadership, also from Samford. She and her family, Rob and Emma and Noah, live in Riverside, California. And I will say, having been able to visit with her for a few minutes before this event, she is as delightful as all of you have said she is. So thank you, Robin, for being here with us today.
Well, it is my pleasure. Thank you so much for all of that. That is very kind. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and we will see how that goes today. It's so good. Hi, Lori. I've seen a couple others jump in. So great to see you. Let's see if that'll go into present mode. Okay. I told him this is not acting like it normally does, of course, because, why would it act normal when I have all these people I really, really want to see? Good to see everybody. Okay, so thank you for having me. This is a huge honor, and I had no idea how much fun it already is just to see your faces and feel connected to you guys. And so many of you have been a part of this journey. So let me just start out by, again, thanking you for letting me have this opportunity. So before we could begin in teacher mode, I would like for you guys to participate. So I want you to think for a minute about one or two people or one or two experiences that have really formed who you are. So if you've got a piece of paper down, you might jot it down, or you might just type it on your phone. Just think about who are one or two people or experiences that have formed who you are. So I'm going to start by telling a little bit, but I feel kind of silly now. I'm thinking most of you know my story, but a few of you may not. So I'll sum it all up as quickly as I can. But I like to think about it as God's story in my life. And every one of you, if we were in class, I do this. I make everybody in my class make a slide of their life and tell us a little bit. And so I'd love to see what you guys would put on this slide. But since Kathy asked me to, I'm going to tell you my story. So you can blame Kathy later. So I was born and raised in Paducah, Kentucky. I was raised an only child in a wonderful Christian home, and had a great experience going to school, as most of us who are educators did, right? I mean, we kind of kept doing school because we like school. So had a great experience in Kentucky, but the Lord brought me to Samford as an 18-year-old, and I had eyes on other universities, and they were great places as well. But when I pulled onto campus, I said, "That's it, Dad. You can leave me here." Those gates that are right behind Tanya. I remember pulling in those gates and saying, "This is my place." So I loved every minute of Samford. I really did. Math and chemistry major with education, secondary education under Dr. Rawls and all the wonderful professors that we had there in the School of Education and then in the math and chemistry department. So finished there and came to work for Sonia Carrington, who's on the call. So worked for her at Pizzitz. I worked at McAdory High School and then back at Vestavia High School. And then along the way somewhere, I said, I love the Pythagorean theorem. I really do, but I don't think I'm going to teach the Pythagorean theorem for 30 years. And I tell my students, I say, above all, the crux of teaching is the classroom teacher. That education is about the classroom teacher. But we've all got to find our place in that. And that we're not all going to be classroom teachers, because classroom teachers need support in different levels, everywhere from all the way from preparation, administration, and policy, really. So then I went to Jeannie's office, who's also on the call, and I said, "Jeannie, I don't think I'm going to teach the Pythagorean theorem for 30 years. What do you suggest?" And she said, "Well, why don't you come be a grad assistant and get your doctorate?" So that's what I did, and I worked for Maurice and Ruth and Jody and Jeannie and a bunch of people as I got my degree and finished up. And I believe I was 8.5 months pregnant when I defended my dissertation with Emma. So Gretchen, in your office, we used to take pictures of my belly growing. every so often, just see how that was going to go. So that was fantastic. Ended up getting to stay on, work at Samford as a faculty member, and then as director of the 5th year program, and worked with Beth Smith, who was a fantastic partner in crime on that project. My last official full semester at Samford, I spent at the London Daniel House. We call it our fairyland experience in London. My kids, Noah was in the 2nd grade and Emma was in the 6th grade. My gracious husband said that there's a theme here. My gracious husband is a big theme here, but he said, "Go, it's an opportunity of a lifetime." And so the kids and I packed up and we spent a semester in London, while my husband sold all of our belongings and our home. And he did this with our blessing, though. Let me say, prior to, I had my appointment in London, but prior to that, the Lord began to work in our lives. And I like to say and emphasize, he didn't change our calling, he changed our geography, because our calling is all the same, right? We're Christians, we're followers of Christ, and we're called to love God and love people and share his story. And so through a long process, and you're welcome to ask about that started with just a phone call saying, what does it mean to be a missionary? We accepted an appointment with the International Mission Board. So that was all finalized right before in December, and then we left for London in January. So I wouldn't have planned that to be my last semester at Samford, because like I said, I'm a big Samford fan. I would have stayed. But the Lord had just some incredible opportunities built into that semester at Samford Daniel House. Actually, I don't know if any of you know Robin and Dave Johnson, and Dave Johnson's in the biology department. They were our co-host in the Daniel House, and they had actually been missionaries for the IMB. And so got to really pour into us, and we got to learn from them. Probably one of the coolest, like little, Kathy and I've talked about these little threads, these little kind of crumbs of God's affirmation and assurance in our life. We don't always acknowledge them. I know there's a lot more than I ever acknowledge, but one was that our church in London actually became our church in Malaysia. They had their first international church plant, and we were sitting in church on Sunday morning. And if any of you know Kathy Clay, her daughter Stephanie had invited us to that church. So there we go, another Samford connection. We were living in London. She invited us to church, sitting in church one Sunday, and the pastor there at Holy Trinity Brompton announced that they were going to have a church plant in this, far off land called Kuala Lumpur. And of course, at that point, I knew that's where we were going to end up. And I mean, of course, I'm just like weeping, trying to compose myself. But the Lord just really, that was such a blessing to us that we spent 3 years with them in Kuala Lumpur. So that was through Samford. But then, so we got back from London, went immediately to Virginia to the International Mission Board training facility, spent about 2 or 3 months there, and then we moved to Indonesia. So we didn't live in quite that rural of a setting, but it was close. It was a pretty rural setting. We learned language. My kids went to a small international Christian school, part of the NICS network. So if you guys have international student teachers still, I'm not sure if you do, but great network to work with to place student teachers. And again, a small little God story. Jonja Jax, I had been visiting her with Jody. I'm not sure if you were on that trip, but somehow I convinced her that we needed to go check out this school for student teachers across the country. We went on this crazy road trip out to see this school. Jonja and I did, and I got to meet the guy, and he's like, yeah, we'd love to have Samford student teachers. That'd be fantastic. I was like, great. And then come to find out, several years later, that that's the very school my kids would go to for their 3rd and 7th grade year. So that was, we learned language. Learning language at 40 something is very humbling. And one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I said, it was the best professional development for me as a teacher trainer to go in and try to learn something that was literally foreign to me. Because we think I love math. Why would someone want to learn math? Why would they not care and be, Lori's laughing at me, care and be excited about learning math? But I was so overwhelmed and underqualified to learn language that it was just really good to feel that student perspective when you just think, I've got nothing, you literally nothing. But we survived. The Lord blessed. We were good. We learned language, and then we moved to Kuala Lumpur, which was in Malaysia. So we moved to Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, city of 8 million people, big metropolitan city, people from literally all over the world. And that's where my kids went to, not a Christian, but a secular British international school. And in their school, there were kids from 52 nations, which is very representative of Kuala Lumpur. It's a very multinational city. Now, the country of Malaysia is about 95% Muslim, but the city itself is very, very diverse. And we lived there, and we lived in a little apartment. The school was about a mile from where we were, and they could ride their bikes there. I had a great experience. My primary work in Malaysia was with refugee students, particularly from Myanmar, Syria, Pakistan, particularly with students who wanted to access some kind of college education, some higher education. We think so much when we think of refugee children, of the small children, which is horrific and a terrible plight that they have. But there were also these 18, 19, 20-year-olds who had either started university in their home country or had finished secondary school and wanted to access higher education. And there were opportunities for them there in Malaysia even. And so we began a program connecting those students with the opportunities. And actually, it's really fun. About every other week, I have a call with our group who have now scattered across the world, and we have to meet at 6 a.m. because that's the only time that the time zones all match up. But we're working on putting all this online so that and producing it for free. So if you ever are on a trip or know someone who lives overseas who works with refugee students, helping them access opportunities for refugee students. And so we're working on that product, and we're going to be pushing that out as quickly as we can, and it'll be absolutely free for everybody, of course. Then, and I didn't say my husband's job overseas. I mean, we were missionaries, so we shared the gospel, which was super easy to do. I'd never lived in a place where you could just walk up to somebody and talk about faith. The people in Malaysia love talking about faith in general. But then, so I would say, at least once a week, I would talk to someone who literally had never heard the story of Christ. So it was very humbling. It was, and they'd heard of Jesus, particularly Muslims, because he's in the Quran, but they had not heard the story that we know of the good news. And so it was a wonderful, it was hard at times, but it was also wonderful. And it was just a real honor to be there. But my husband's work was primarily with helping more Christians come into that area. So the IMB at one point had more of a push of having professionals, retirees, and students coming, kind of accessing the space, because we struggled with visas, to be honest, and Indonesia's the same story. There's a point where, why are you here? And so if I were to be there as an educator, or if he were to be there in finance, those things make a lot more sense. The visas are very accessible, but then you just get to live your life just like no different than you do every day in Alabama. So that was kind of one of our pushes, was that, we're, again, all called to the same life. It's just, we need to live that out wherever the Lord has planted us. And at the time that was in Kuala Lumpur. As we came back for our stateside visit, we were praying over, okay, Lord, where next? What next? Do we go back to Malaysia, which was very much on the table? We were actually talking about going back to London with the International Mission Board, because they liked my husband's, the work he was doing in bringing professionals in. You wouldn't think London would be hard, but it is actually hard to get people right to live in England as well. So he would have done some of that work. And so we had a lot of feelers out. And at the time, I had an opportunity to apply for a position here at CBU. And that was the first thing that got, kind of came to the full, like, yes, this is an actual option. And so the Lord opened that door. And again, the theme, my gracious husband said, opportunity of a lifetime. Of course we're going to go. And so it's the hard call to say to my then, I don't know, what was she then, 14-year-old, do you want to move again? Ready to, and she said, you bet, let's move to California. So my kids have, from day one that we first told them that we were going to move, they've been, and I think that's just the grace of God, that they've been agreeable. We've never had a word. Now, my kids are kids, and they're not like, angels. They have their own struggles, but just the spirit of adventure that God gave them, so that generally, in fact, when we would face struggles with them, we would say, is this a Malaysia problem, or is this I'm a 15-year-old girl problem? Because we have all experienced that. So anyway, the Lord's been really gracious. CBU is a great place. I didn't know a lot about it. California Baptist University. Some of you know Dr. Sands, Chuck Sands, who's the provost here, and then Ron Ellis, who's the president. Ron Ellis came 25 years ago, and there were 885 students. This year we started with over 11,300 students. So we are, I think it's still #1 fastest growing university in the country. We're one of them. We're up there. We're one or two fastest growing universities. And we even had growth this fall in the midst of COVID. So praise God. Southern California is a little bit of a Bible Belt bubble here in California, so it's sometimes a little surprising, but but it's a great place. But we are distinctive, and I think the community sees that. I was just telling Anna, we had our accreditation last March 20th, and about 3 days before the accreditation team was to arrive, the world shut down, and the accreditation team called and said, we're going to do a virtual visit. I was like, oh, okay. What did that, a year ago, that was but their takeaway, we had a good visit, we had a good accreditation visit, but their takeaway was that our employers see, and I was like, yes, this is just like Samford. This is what we always heard at Samford. Our employers see that our students care about their kids. They have the skill set like other graduates from other universities, but they're like, there's just something about the students from CBU. They really seem to care. And I'm thinking, yeah, I don't know. It's this God thing. So anyway, our CBU is a great place. We've had a lot of fun. It's an hour from the beach, an hour to the mountains, an hour to the desert. I'm still not over the fact that I can just leave church on Sunday and say, hey, you want to go to the beach for lunch today? Really kind of warms my heart. That's pretty fun. And this is the family. This was just this Sunday at Easter. So Emma, like I said, is a freshman here at CBU, and Noah is a freshman. He's actually right now getting a root canal. So I wasn't able to be with him for his root canal today. Poor buddy. And then we'll be going to baseball practice. He's a freshman in high school. So that's us. And when I think about all of the different things that we've done, and the way the Lord has just, been right there with us. Like I said, never perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Hard days, good days. I often think of that imagery of the back of the tapestry, right? Well, we don't see how it actually all goes together. And I think if we had time for all of you guys to tell your same story, just like I just did, we begin to see maybe these blends of colors. We'd see these patches of blue or the dark green coming together. And we would see from God's perspective how this is beginning to tie together. Let me change my screen over here. So I think of a lot of what I think the Lord has taught me has had to do with perspective. And I was just having a chat with one of our new faculty members the other day, and we said, wouldn't we like to talk to our 20-year-old selves and tell them a few things? I said, what I'd really like is for my 60 or 70-year-old self to talk to me now. That's who I'd like to hear from, because she would probably tell me some things that, like I would have told my 20-year-old self at this point. But my world is my mission, my life, education, that all ties together. And that's all hopefully pointing towards God's mission, which is his story, which is just to love God and love people. And I think the opportunities that we've had throughout our lifetime has just been such a blessing to be able to stop and say, oh, okay, yeah, if I hadn't been raised the way I was raised, if I hadn't gone to Samford, if I hadn't had Jeannie Box pouring into my life, if I hadn't had, Sonia Carrington as my first administrator, my life would look different. And, we are formed through our life experiences. I love reading biographies, and I read Michelle Obama's book. I've read, you guys have probably read Educated and Hillbilly Elegy and some of those. And you think, if that had been my life, that would have been my lived reality. That wasn't my lived reality. My lived reality was a little town in Kentucky with two great Christian parents, went off to Samford, had a ball. Those were my realities. So I try to really work on what is my perspective, and how can I broaden that perspective so that I could pour into other people like they have me. And I think of the story of Paul in Athens, when he kind of stops and he's spending time, right? He looks around and he tries to get to know people. He sees their idols, he talks to them, he asks them questions, he gets to know them. And then he recognizes this unknown God, right? He says, you've got this idol to this unknown God. Well, what if I tell you about this God? And then you begin to see reformation in that area, not for everybody, but for some people. And I think about that in our lives, how we are formed by our experiences. We have these experiences. Some of them are chosen by us. Some of them are put on us when we can't. We don't have any choice, right? I didn't have choice that I grew up in Paducah, Kentucky, but it was a great experience. But I was formed by that. But then I believe that as we study God's word and as we get to know him, we're transformed. And then we begin to look at those experiences through his eyes. And sometimes they're positive, sometimes they're negative. I mean, I think about sharing the gospel with a Muslim as if a Muslim were sharing their faith with me, as foreign as that would seem, like I wouldn't have anywhere to hang that, right? I've never looked at my life through the lens of their worldview. That's what Paul did when he said, here's this unknown God idol for you, but here, let me introduce you to this idol. But in our own lives, so I see this as a cycle where we're formed by our experiences, we're transformed when we can think of it through God's lens, and then we begin to reform our lives or possibly even someone else's. And I'll try not to be emotional, but so many of you on this call transformed my life by your example, by your love, by your just walking alongside me saying, you can do it. So we are in this constant cycle, and sometimes we're being formed, sometimes we're being transformed, and sometimes we're helping reform. So, that I feel like all the steps of my life have been kind of going through that cycle, and I see our students going through that cycle. I see, we're all in God's image going through those different cycles. So I'm going to stop talking and say that, one of my mantras since being here, particularly here at CBU, this idea, specific wording has come to me. We must intentionally seek to understand and ask questions, as Paul did in Athens, because and we know, Anna and I kind of alluded to this, our world right now is grappling with so many big issues, and our students are going through so much. We've got to seek to understand. If several of you nodded your head that you read Educated. That young lady at some point in her life encountered some teachers, and I wonder, did they seek to understand? And am I seeking to understand my brother and sister who I may adamantly disagree with? and that's okay, we can disagree, but am I seeking to understand? Am I asking the questions so that then I have the opportunity to share my story and share what God has done and will do, so that we can hopefully be that inspiration for others. So as I conclude my part, I just want to say, you've written down a couple of names that influenced you. Now, whether you're a student or whether you're retired, like my friend Shelley, if you think of, but again, truly, if you're a student, you're a college student, and you have younger high school students and children looking up to you, who are one or two people we could give back to? Who are one or two people maybe even that we know we disagree with that we could give back to? There were a lot of people in Malaysia who would have disagreed with me on a lot of things, but we were able to find that common ground, and in that we were able to share our stories both ways, not just me sharing my story, but them sharing their story. And I would always get one of the faiths that we encountered a lot in Malaysia were free thinkers. And that was atheists, but they called themselves free thinkers. And when we would talk about, faith, they would say, well, I've never thought about that. And I said, yeah, that's just it. Let's talk about it. Let's think about it. And so that was often a great opportunity just to talk and to get to know each other. And so I want to pray for us. And if you can think of those one or two people that you think maybe I could pour into them in a certain way. Maybe I could be a part of helping them transform and look through God's lens, not to convince them of your political view or, to convince them of your, something, but to help them really just take a step back and look through God's lens, like how would God see this? And that's the challenge to myself as well. So let me pray and then we'll do questions. Father God, I thank you so much for this opportunity. What a fun day and blessing, God. You are so good to bring our circles back together. And I'm just so encouraged and inspired by the people on this call. So many of them are and have been throughout the years an inspiration for me. God, as we think about the people that we maybe right now that you've called us to pour into, God, I ask that you just give us our next step. How can we do that, Lord? How can we take time away from ourselves to get to know them, to understand them, and God, to just give them the blessing of your love in their lives. And be with us as we go forth from here, that we might shine your light to the people around us, whatever our geography. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so that's kind of all that I was going to share today. And then if you have questions or want to talk about something, I will stop sharing.
Okay. Would anyone like to ask a question? No one typed a question. So if you would like to ask a question of Robin about any of her experiences that she was talking about, or any of your experience at California Baptist, or any of that, or if you want to share about the person that influenced your life, we'd love to hear from you. You can just unmute and let us know. I know we have some folks online today that have done a lot of missions work and very involved in, I think of Megan Allen. She's online. I won't make her speak up if she doesn't want to, but she's done a lot of work in Uganda, and is a teacher, special education teacher, and has a great impact on her students.
And this, you all had a student who had a school. I've actually got her book on my shelf. Who had a school in Africa. I can't remember where off the top of my head.
Yes.
Are y'all still connected with her?
Yes, we are.
Is that Jennifer?
Terra Nova.
Terra Nova. Yeah.
Alicia Dameron Zerionge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah. And do you all have are you all able to send student teachers internationally now?
Not at the present moment, but we will be able to get back into that arena maybe as things open up in the next year.
Might be an opportunity to collaborate. I was just talking to one of our new student teacher coordinator, and we're talking about, we kind of don't want to send people one by one. We kind of want to send them two by two. And so, it might be an area that we could collaborate. If we had a student going to Bandung and you all had a student who wanted to go, then we could send them together and they'd have a buddy. So that might be a fun thing to do. We have that option. We obviously haven't been doing it in the last year and a half.
Were you here when the Terra Nova teachers came?
Not the teachers.
Okay.
The student, I'm sorry, what was her name?
Alicia.
Alicia, she was there. So, and I know Carol Dean had done some work with her. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, Dr. Hoagland, Amy Hoagland, worked on a grant to bring the Terra Nova teachers to Samford. And they came one Jan term, and it was amazing. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I heard wonderful things about that.
Good.
Yeah, that's great.
I think most people on this call, I had to, they contributed in some way. I see all of these faces in here, and everybody just poured out their love on those teachers. It was awesome.
Hi, Amy. Good to hear your voice.
Hey, Robin. I miss you.
Thank you. I miss all you guys.
And yes, let's get together and chat about sending forth some student teachers and how that might look, because that's
absolutely
logistically it is difficult.
And I found a couple of organizations who will really support the logistics. So we can talk about that. They're able to really do some of the heavy lifting of passports and visas, not passports, but visas and housing and that kind of thing. So
we've sent through NICS before. That's who you were with, right?
Well, I mean, my kids went to the NICS school, and they're very good, although their ramp up is a little long. And I've talked to them about that, because you have to like declare what you're going to do a year and a half in advance.
Yeah, yes, you do. Mm-hmm.
And then, but there's a couple others who would even place you in a NICS school, which would be fantastic. But I'm drawing a blank on the name of the organization, but there's a couple of them that we've talked to who actually help schools, because schools want to have student teachers internationally, because then that increases the number of people who are actually interested in going over and teaching later. And from Samford, I know we had somebody go to the school in Kenya, in Nairobi, and then one who went to South Korea too, when I was teaching there. Amy, in the class, they were in the class that you and I taught that intro class together.
Yeah. And Murtis works in the past. She's been able to work with, is NICS the one that's located their headquarters in Mississippi?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She works with them, and she does some online, I guess, job fair type things with them.
Yeah. So, but there's a couple others who will place you with a variety of schools, but then they're kind of more the logistical people. So they're really helpful.
And people don't like to commit a year and a half ahead of time. That's what's so hard.
And Ashley just put in the chat that Rift Valley Academy is in Kenya.
Very good. And I always tell my students, not all international schools are made the same. There's, such a wide variety of what you experience out there. And you just want to be careful. I want to be careful if I put my approval on a student to go somewhere, to know what the experience will be, what the safety will be, and that kind of thing. So, but when we put our heads together, we can really find some good places.
We have a Samford alum I know that used to teach there. Well, a couple of them. They used to teach at RVA. If you ever decide to go that direction, I could put y'all in touch with them.
Good.
Robin, Shannon Bream has published a new book, and it's Women of the Bible. And I ordered it, and I just started reading it, and it is phenomenal. It goes into depth with some of the women that are just mentioned in the Bible. And so she's done a lot of research on the impact that they made on other people's lives, so that, you really don't think about. So it's just very interesting. But that's a recommendation that you might want to read and find out about more women in that, especially the Old Testament.
I was listening to Scott McKnight, who's at Northern Seminary, which, if you all remember, Bill Scheel, who's a Samford graduate, who's now the president of Northern Seminary in Chicago, and Scott McKnight's one of his professors, and he talked about, although women are, not typically the main characters in the Bible, even the fact that they were mentioned, given the context of when the Old Testament was written, is amazing. And then if you dig into just what you're saying, Sonia, their impact was significant. So
yeah.
Sonia, who was the author again?
Shannon Bream, Bream. When you were working with the refugees, Robin, what exactly did you do with them? Were you teaching them? Were you helping them with food, or what were you doing with them?
So the situation is pretty dire in Malaysia for refugees. Malaysia is not a signatory of the 1950 refugee agreement. And so the UN functions in Malaysia, but it's kind of at the pleasure of the government. And so it's a tenuous relationship. So they're kind of careful. So children cannot attend any of the public schools in Malaysia. However, there's a lot of good organizations, both Christian, Muslim, and nonprofits, who typically target the kindergarten through 8th or 9th grade range. It's not adequate. It's not anything you or I would feel comfortable with, but it's some form of education. So we knew that was going on. I got invited to a meeting, and it was just a God thing. Why I was there, I don't know. But anyway, found myself sitting across from the table from a girl from Washington, D.C., a lady from England, and a lady from Turkey. Anyway, we were all academics, and the presentation basically said there are opportunities for refugee students to access higher education, but we don't get applicants. And we were like, well, that's weird. And then it said, well, they missed the deadline. They don't know how to write an essay. They don't just know the processes. And they were mostly Western institutions, universities, who could kind of work in the gray because they'd call them international students and not refugees. And so, right. But anyway, so we targeted the audience of 17 to 20-year-olds who had finished secondary education. And once we started kind of finding these students, they were just hungry for it. Globally, less than 3% of refugees attend higher education. Our program's at about 20 to 25% of the ones who actually engaged with our program who have accessed higher education. So we're very pleased with that. That's still not anywhere near the number we want it to be, but it's a step in the right direction. But it was basically, and we call the program CERTE, C-E-R-T-E. So it was connecting refugees to tertiary education. Our British friends use tertiary education. I was like, what is that? So it was helping them make sure they knew what opportunities were out there. And because most of the refugees were in hiding most of the time, they didn't want to be out and about much and would get picked up by authorities. So we'd be able to get inroads into the communities so that we could get the information to them. And then the teaching we did was more about soft skills. So what does it mean to go to an interview, and how do you get the application filled out and online? Oh, and this is a great audience. I'm going to tell you all about something at the end of this. So we would connect them to those opportunities, help them fill out the applications, soft skills. What does it mean to attend a university class? How do you take notes? How do you engage with a university professor? That kind of thing. And it was just a ton of fun. We had a blast. We'd meet with them. We'd have like a mini course. So we'd meet like 6 days. So over 3 months, we'd meet, a weekend a month for 3 months. And then that's what would lead up to the deadlines of those applications being due. And then we'd eat lunch together and all that kind of, just to make it fun. But there's 19, 20, they're college students who were just having a blast getting together. They never interacted with people outside of their community. So if you're a Pakistani refugee, you'd never interact with a Rohingya or a Somali refugee, because that would be dangerous. So it was really neat to get to see them interact with each other. So I told you that we're going online. So here's my little
pitch.
It is a pitch, Sonia. That's exactly what it is. So we're going online, but we're going online with it. But my particular piece, so in that program that we ran, we had mentors. And so the way I described it was an interested aunt. We called everybody auntie and uncle in overseas. And so it was an interested auntie and uncle who would just kind of, just like you would, like your nephew, you applying to CBU? You gotten your stuff in? You want me to look over your essay? That kind of thing. And so I just happened to have all Christian aunties and uncles. I don't know how it happened, but they just happened to all be Christians. So even though the program was with the UN and they would not have preferred it to be that way, they didn't care, really. I had committed people, adults. So when we go online, if any of you are interested in being an auntie or uncle mentor to a refugee student, we could even connect some of the CBU, I tongue tie CBU and Samford all the time, by the way. They're like, did you just say Samford? Like, I meant CBU. But we could even tie in some of the Samford, like juniors and seniors, that we could tie them in, or grad students. But it'd be just a great opportunity to mentor them. Like I said, you don't have to know what it means to get into school in Malaysia, just that you care enough to say, hey, would you like me to review your paper? Would you like me to, don't forget the deadline's coming up, kind of. And now that we can do it all over Zoom, it's all over the world. So anyway, it would be an opportunity. If any of you guys are interested, you could let me know personally and I'll sign you up. We had a meeting yesterday, trying to get all the, so we worked with all those nonprofit, kind of the K-8, 9 schools. We're collaborating with them to help them identify those older siblings who would be age appropriate and academically appropriate for this program. So. That was a long answer, Sonia, sorry.
I love it.
That's great.
Taking notes.
Jeannie's looking for her mute button. She found it.
I had one question.
Yes.
And I guess, and actually I've had the wonderful opportunity to teach the Christian education class this spring, thanks to Amy Hoagland, my mentor, my wonderful mentor. But, and Amy can help answer this too, but, I guess it's interesting what questions our undergraduates have about going overseas. So I just wondered what what advice you might have to encourage us, to encourage them. Of course, part of it is now with the COVID, that has kind of put, they've had questions about traveling. And then they, I think they've asked, do they need to teach a few years before they consider going overseas? And, and like I said, Amy, this is a program that she's spearheaded and directed, but I just didn't know if you had any advice for undergrads or grads, but mostly undergrads who will be graduating and probably, before they have a family or have a job. Just what advice might you give them to encourage them? Because I can tell, of course, you're a little timid. You're very interested, and then sometimes I think they're, it's also a little scary.
Yeah. So first of all, if you ever want, I'll be happy to come chat with them about that. But I would also connect them to other people who are currently on the field. So I think connecting them to people who are either missionaries on the field or actually teachers on the field. I know a couple of principals around the world who could identify, a teacher or two who might be a good conversationalist for them. As I think I said when I was talking about when we joined the International Mission Board, it was funny because my husband was getting his MDiv, which he has since finished, and he's still going to school. So we just all love school. Bless him. He's doing a PhD in urban missiology.
Oh.
So he was a financial planner for 20 years in Birmingham. And I didn't tell you guys, he's with the California Baptist Foundation now in California, which the Lord was so good, kind of great combination of his ministry and finance background. But he had a pastor as a client, and he was in his office one day in Birmingham, and he said, "Why are you getting an MDiv?" And Rob was like, "I don't know. I mean, like, I figure I'd be a better Sunday school teacher, better husband. I mean, just, I like going to school." And he goes, "And then someday, Rob and I think, maybe the mission field, maybe something like that might be for us." And he said, "Well, why later? Why not now?" And I was like, "Because we have a family, she has a good job, I have a good job, all the reasons you shouldn't pack up everything and move overseas." And the guy said, "You could just pick up the phone and call the International Mission Board." And that started the whole thing off. And he said, just because you call them doesn't mean that you're committed. You can just pick up the phone and start the conversation. So I would actually say that to our students: pick up the phone, have a conversation. They have short-term, mid-term, and long-term assignments. They have a lot of these short-term now that are like 6 to 9 months. They also have the old journeyman program, which is 2 years. There are other great organizations besides the International Mission Board. That's just the one I happen to know of. Again, anecdotally, every country's a little different. So like we know that in Indonesia, they now really, it's hard to get a teacher visa without 5 years of experience. But what happens to our undergrads is they get 5 years of experience and then they have a baby and a husband, and Indonesia is no longer quite as enticing as it was. Other countries aren't that way. You can go as a first-year teacher. In California, we're actually at a disadvantage, I think, because of that 2 year of clearing your credential. You kind of need to stay and clear that credential and then go overseas. So every situation's a little bit different, but I just tell them to explore. And it sounds like Amy's getting and Murtis are getting some, job fair kind of things out there. I would tell them to do a lot of due diligence research. I actually had an interview lined up for what looked like a fantastic school in Malaysia, and I was going to interview and see what that possibility was. And then I just ran into someone at church, and he said, no. He said, that's a rough place. He said, you do not need, I canceled my interview. I didn't even go. But every school is so different. And, but oh my goodness, I would chat with those young teachers at my kids' school in Malaysia. Bali one weekend, Phuket the next weekend. I mean, they were living the high life. And I know not all, and I tell people, I said, international teaching can be under a tree with a stick and a rock, or it can be at one of these mega international universities. I mean, international schools. I said, and then everything in between. But yeah, they had a good life, but man, they could teach. I would walk. I loved their school building was so cool because it was all exterior doors, and you'd walk by and it was all one wall was always glass. And so if you walk through, and parents walk through all the time, which was bizarre for an American, but apparently it was the thing there. And so you could just walk through the building and you just, right when we picked the school, Rob said, how do you know it's a right school? And I said, because that's good teaching. He said, you haven't been in a room. I said, I'm telling you, it's good teaching. I'm looking in every window, and the principal doesn't stop you and say, not now. The principal's like, yeah, come on in, watch them teach. So if I were young and 20 something, I would totally, and really I could do it tomorrow too, if the opportunity of the right thing happened. But it's a good gig teaching like that. It's a lot of fun. But I think the 2x2 is also important. I would advise them, find somebody to go with, have a partner in crime, even if it's not somebody but it's just somebody,
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Robin, you're a wealth of information for our current students who have those questions. So I love that our faculty are here and can help connect you with those students and your connections. I think it would make a world of difference for them to be able to have those conversations with people that have been there. Does anybody else have any questions for Robin before we go? It's been such a good discussion.
And if you are in Southern California, my door is open. Oh my goodness, all of you just come on. We'll go to Disney. Disneyland's finally opening back up, the beach, the mountains. So it's a beautiful part of the country. And it's called Riverside without a river. So there you go.
Awesome.
Thank you all for having me. It's really been an honor.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Robin, for your time today. I know the time change and the difference and all that, but we are so grateful to have you with us today and hear your story. It really means a lot. And we have recorded this for those, and Leighton and I will work together on getting that up and recorded for our students. And so if you know somebody who's like, I wish they heard that today, we'll make that possible. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin. We love you.
Great to see you.
You look beautiful.
You're so kind. Great to see you. Thanks for taking time to be with me today.
Everybody take care. God bless you.
Miss you guys.
Bye, Robin.
You too,
It's
Robin.
great seeing you. Bye, Robin. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
How fun.